It's interesting. When I was going to elementary, junior, and high school, I wasn't really thinking about what I wasn't getting in education. There were so many variations of things we were learning, and I found each of them interesting, and I loved reading about them, and I loved teachers who were interested in their subjects. But by the time I made it to college, I started to wonder what wasn't taught. And one of the first things that I realized that wasn't taught was loving. And there was even an implication that you can't teach loving, or that is loving for attractive people? What are you teaching loving for? Loving yourself? That was really intricate. And loving a partner, that was definitely a high school thing. But loving a subject, loving a country, loving a pet, these were all part of what we students were thinking about. And it wasn't really until I became a doctor and spent a lot of time with patients that I started to wonder, loving is so important for people. How would one teach loving so that when they reached adulthood, they would not only know something about it, but be skilled at doing it and studying it? Because it wasn't there. And the same can be said true of joy, even humor. It's interesting that humor was studied for what was funny, but not how to make it. And there was this idea that you studied to make a living, what you were going to study in college, a general subject, but again, not a specific interest in something. And that was truly a remarkable direction, where you suddenly became interested in, you could be interested in farming. I quickly became interested in psychology and groupness and how to get along, and skills that were there instead of bossing, instead of commanding. How does one get along in a group of people? And it's interesting, it wasn't so much learning psychology types as in learning to be with. Wasn't taught to be with nature. Mother wanted me to go to church. I have to say I was never interested in God or what at that time was called spirituality. And religious people were often very limited in what they meant by religion. They meant a specific religion and how that religion handled things rather than a spirituality that I've grown to have more respect for the much older I've gotten, rather than what Catholicism meant or Judaism meant or Muslim people meant, but this thing talked about called one's spirituality. And what's interesting, of course, is as you age, these things are mentioned as general subjects, and then one day you decide to make it your subject. And this was true for me for loving and joy, interest. These became subjects that I knew were going to be important for me the rest of my life. I was a reader. I loved reading more in the subjects that I was taught in school. And that became interesting. So, interest in things, learning about things, actually became a part of who I am for the rest of my life. I'm still there. And there are some subjects that I'm still really exploring, like love and joy and humor big time. Government, there's government of control and government of getting along. And that I was starting to learn when I started to be interested in communes, in groups of people getting along, in tribal life and living, and more as a way of getting along than a way of becoming a boss. I never really thought becoming a boss was a direction I wanted, because it seemed to eliminate intelligence.